wisest guru in the whole world lives at the top of the highest mountain. So this man travels to this mountain, he climbs up the whole mountain, and along the way he gets bruises and he gets cuts, but he finally reaches the top of the mountain and finds the guru. And he asks him, what is the meaning of life? What is real? And the guru replies, the meaning of life is a teacup. I climbed all the way up this mountain just to find out that the meaning of life is a teacup. And the guru just responds with, well, maybe the meaning of life is not a teacup. So what this says is that no matter how hard you try to find the answers of what is real, there will always be another answer, and there's not one definitive answer. But, however, there are some explanations, and one of these very compelling explanations to what is real is materialism. But before we answer the question of what is real, we have to know, how do we know it's real? So in order to answer that question, we go back to empiricism, which is the idea that all of our experiences and sensory input tells us how we know. So along those lines, John Locke used this to support materialism. Let's take rain, for instance. If you ask the question, how do we know it's raining outside? How do we know that rain is real? Well, we can use our senses. The rain pattering on the windowsill, well, we can hear that. We can see the droplets of rain falling from the sky. We can go outside and feel the cold rain on our bodies and feel our saturated clothing. We can even, a lot of people say, I love the smell of rain. Well, that's just from after a storm. We all know that distinct smell that rain that happens. So all these senses work together to tell us that rain is real. Now, how do we know that our senses are dependable? Well, all of our senses are also part of physical objects, and that's all what materialism is about. It's about using material objects as being real. So our neurons in our bodies, those are just as material as our senses. That's what creates the senses. So, for instance, let's take an example here. If there's a bee on your arm, and it stings you, the first thing that happens is you get pain from it. So when that sting happens, there's the nerve endings, feel that, and it travels up along the afferent pathways, and it enters the central nervous system of the brain. So the brain processes this information and sends out more responses to that area. One response is just the action of looking at to see what's wrong. So you swipe off the bee, take the stinger out. If you're allergic to bees, you have to get an EpiPen. So all these actions take place because these physical impulses that are happening inside the body are taking place. So the idea of idealism would say that it's not real, but how can you deny all these physical things that are happening in the body? And every single thought, idea, feeling, and emotion, according to Elaine Maria of the Laboratory Manual, all these thoughts, ideas, feelings, and emotions are caused by these physical materials in our body. So continuing with this idea that we are just made up of material substances, we can compare this with determinism. Determinism is the idea that there is an effect that is the cause of a previous, there's an effect that is the effect of a previous cause, which is just another effect of another previous cause. Excuse me. So there's these chains of causes and effects that happen over a period of time. So you can determine where, let's take a leaf for instance, you can determine where exactly that leaf is going to land based on these external factors, wind, air resistance, and mass. So if you knew all the measurements for that, you can say where exactly that leaf is going to land, and that's determinism. Then how are we any different from these leaves? We're more complex, there's more external factors that come into play, but we're just as material as these leaves. So what's to say that we're not determined to go in a certain spot or to do something particular? So leaves and humans are very similar when it comes to the cell makeup and material substances. Going back to materialism, there's the flatland analogy, which typically would actually support idealism, but the more I look at it, I'm finding support for materialism, because the idea of flatland is that a sphere came to flatland, and if you're unfamiliar with it, there was a square that lived in only a two-dimensional world. And this square had no concept of a third dimension, but a sphere came along and told the square that there's a third dimension. Now, the basic idea of a third dimension was not enough to make it a reality for this square. It was not until the square was physically taken out of the second dimension, put into the third dimension, until it became a reality. So that just proves that it all has to do with physical substances and not immaterial substances, which are just thoughts and ideas. So there was never a conception of reality until it became physical and experienced amongst the square. Now Kant makes, in Blackburn's book, makes a few arguments for materialism as well. Kant makes the argument that immaterial substances are unknown. So therefore, we don't know anything about immaterial substances enough to say that those are realities. We haven't been able to experience those. So if we're using empiricism to say how do we know about reality, then we have to experience something in the first place. And Kant says that we can't make immaterial substances known. And in addition to that, the self, when you look at yourself, you can only experience things in the consciousness. So that just goes on to prove that we don't know anything about our immaterial substances. But ultimately, the choice is up to you. If you think that the world is just composed of immaterial substances and all of our surroundings are just deceptions, what is the point of that? I mean, to know that everything we see is just an illusion, that's very hard for me to accept. So, but materialism allows you to say that these things around us that we are experiencing on a day-to-day basis are real. These matters and emotions are real to us. And that's why I think that materialism is compelling. Thank you.